Welcome into the K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway. And the dust has settled, and the Twitter fingers are still very active by people in the K-State and KU communities because for the second time this season, the game can't just end with a winner and a loser. It has to have a little bit of post-game flair from one side or the other, or both sides playing a role in it. Because after the game in Manhattan, there was the supposed meeting in the tunnel between assistants from both sides. I don't know that it was ever publicly said who was who, but based on what I've deduced from it, it was something that went on probably between Dream Dowling and Doc Sadler, which who knows. But the Bill Self was asked about it after the game. He didn't really talk about that one too much, didn't act like it was as big of a deal, but he did make it seem like it was a pretty big deal what took place on Tuesday night in Lawrence after KU won the game 90-68 over K-State. We now have Handshake Gate going on. Did Jerome Tang shake hands with KU? Was he disrespectful? All these different things that are going on and are being discussed here with the post-game decorum in both of these games this season, which is just kind of ridiculous. Number one, I will say this, though. This is not a bad thing to have between these two sides. You are rivals. Both sides clearly do not like each other. The fans, as evidenced by Twitter, do not like each other. This is totally fine. What needs to happen now is everybody just owns it and says, yeah, we hate you, you hate us. This is good for college basketball and good for the rivalry. Not like, oh, well, we gotta hold hands and, hug and touch each other after the game. I've always been a handshake line a stupid guy anyways,
Oh, I agree with you.
Major League Baseball has this thing figured out. Those guys shake hands with their own team because they won the game. The losers, you go suck it up in the locker room afterwards. All these other sports, like, yeah, Oklahoma State last year rolls into Manhattan, gets beat 48-0, and they're just, we got to go out to midfield and touch Deuce Vaughn like, oh, great game, you just kicked our butts. That's so stupid. So I'm an anti-handshake line guy. It's fine for your 5-year-old in YMCA basketball, but I really see no point or reason to it. Once you get older, like whatever, there's respect enough there, but you don't need it. And we know that some people handle it poorly. Never forget Coach K and Dylan Brooks in the NCAA tournament. Turns out Coach K might have been in the right there based on what we know about Dylan Brooks now. But it's just, it doesn't make a ton of sense that this is what we do. In terms of what went down between Bill Self and Jerome Tang, it was brought up after the game, and then another question came along, and Bill Self brought it up again, and the word he used was that there was a flyby. And if, we can go over all of this and kind of break it down, but Drew, your initial thoughts on when this started to come out, because I was already down in the media room getting things set up when the game ended. So I didn't see the handshake line live. You may have still been in a spot where you could see it, but you probably didn't notice anything out of the ordinary because it didn't look like anything, wild. It's not like Tang was tripping guys and then just ran off the court. So what did you see, and what do you take away from this?
First, could you imagine if that's what happened? Like, the entire K-State staff just like tripped KU players as they walked by. That would have been just hilarious to me. But it's kind of like just behind the scenes, behind the curtain for everybody. And I know that the KU people are going to love this. Mason and I, we rode together to the game and back from Lawrence. So we had a little carpool going on.
Only for like 15 minutes from Topeka to Lawrence. So, it's not like it was the whole trip.
But it's kind of like what I told you when I first saw it. It's like, KU just kicked K-State's butt, and the first thing that comes to Bill Self's mind is like trying to be the victim, and it's very KU and very Bill Self to kind of take everything away from the basketball game and put it on this. Because when you look at the video, I don't see how what Jerome Tang did was any different than what Bill Self did in Manhattan. I don't understand why this is a story, because handshake lines when you get after high school are just stupid.
Yeah. I think they're stupid in high school, but I don't want to offend the high school people. It's about sportsmanship. Screw sportsmanship. As long as you're not punching guys and telling them to suck it, then you're fine.
There's more talk that comes after handshake lines that's bad than is good. So for me,
Yeah,
they're just
nothing
stupid.
productive comes out of the handshake line. There's really no there's really no good to it. So, it is what it is. But
But
we
it just feels it feels very KU and very Bill Self to make this the story of the game. And I think that you can tell how I don't want to say worried Bill Self is about Jerome Tang and K-State, but I don't know if he would be bringing this up if Jerome Tang was 0-4 against KU instead of 2-2. So I feel like it's a combination of trying to make Jerome Tang be the villain because of what happened at Iowa State, and then going into the transfer season of, hey, do you really want to play for that guy?
Well, and so here's the thing. Like, I think there's an element to that where I don't think it's just Jerome Tang, but I think Bill Self. There is a level of he's not threatened because obviously he knows that he's a great coach and he's at. I mean, if not the best basketball job in the country, it's no worse than number 2 in my eyes. But I
Yeah,
look around at all the other schools, and over the last 25 years, there's only one of them that hasn't had a couple of stinky seasons, and it's been
that's
KU. Like, they've sustained this thing a lot better than some of the others have. And it's not like Duke and Carolina have fallen off the face of the earth, but they've had their dips, and that's even with their prime guy as head coach still. That's not happened at KU, but I do think that there is an element where it's a little heat, like you said, 2 seasons, they're 2-2 against each other. And it's not just like a given anymore or anything like that. And I think the other element to this, it's not just Jerome Tang. It's you look around, Houston's in the league now, and they've shown up year one and won the thing. You look Baylor, obviously Scott Drew, he's won a national title. He has won multiple Big 12 titles. So there's that element there. There's just a lot more competitiveness in this league than what there was, 10 years ago, but especially like 15. I think back to when KU lost in Hilton. Bill Self was talking about the scheduling after the game. And I give a lot, like, I do side with Bill Self on this. KU did get kind of the raw end of the deal on some of their scheduling this year. The Big 12 basically looked at him and said, okay, look, you are our marquee brand. You have to play Houston twice. You have to play Baylor twice. K-State is in your state. You have to play them twice. Like, the double ups that they got were brutal compared to what others did. Like, they didn't, all this other stuff. And Iowa State on the flip side, they got it a little easier because they didn't have to go to Allen Fieldhouse this year. And that's why, with the game left to play, that's a big reason of why they're still in this thing to win the Big 12. Because imagine if, they had gone on the road to Allen instead of going on the road to Cincinnati or something. Like, that's a real thing here. So I do think there's a little bit of this, but you talked about, like, this is a Bill Self KU thing to do to play the victim afterwards. My only thing on the K-State side that's a little bit of a concern to me is that this is starting to become a little bit of a K-State Jerome Tang thing, because this is now the third game this season where afterwards there's been some kind of post-game drama that we have become aware about in the direct aftermath. The Iowa State game, that was very public at midcourt with him and TJ Otzelberger. And, through other chains, people learned what that was all about. And then you had the game in Manhattan where obviously something went down in the tunnel that was, lightly discussed and whatever. And then this situation. And as much as we'll break this down real quick, I don't think that Jerome Tang committed, a felony like KU fans are trying to make it seem. But it does make me think a little bit like, where there's smoke, there's fire. Like, this may not be the most innocent situation for K-State. I think both sides can look at themselves and say, okay, we're either making a bigger deal out of this, or there are some things that we need to be better about. In terms of how Jerome Tang handled things, number one, that guy just got beat by 22. It was easily the most pissed off he's been since he's been the head coach at K-State, because he's coached like 60 some games at K-State. Never before had he called out the players and thrown them under the bus for a loss. He did that on Tuesday night. And he could have done it when they lost by 20 at home to Oklahoma. He didn't do it. He could have done it when they lost a must-win. You look terrible for losing a game at Oklahoma State. He didn't do it. Like, there have been so many opportunities for him to do it, and he didn't. That was the most upset he'd been after a loss. And so that's a guy that, like, He just wants to go through we have to do this handshake line thing, slap hands, shake hands. I want to get to the locker room and be pissed off and get my guys. I want to get on them. And so I think that's a part of what came into play here. And other guys are upset after losses. And it's really no different for a guy like Bill Self, as we know, he didn't hang around and have the most friendly of times with Jerome Tang. Here is after the game in Manhattan this year. If we're talking about flybys, here's Bill Self, Jerome Tang after the game in Manhattan, which K-State won. And that was pretty quick. Watch out. We'll slow it down for you here. Here we go. They're walking. Jerome Tang maybe says 3 words, something like, "Hey, great game." And then Bill Self doesn't even look at him, just keeps going by. And
don't blink or you'll miss it.
Here's the other big thing, and this will come into play when we get to the next video. Jerome Tang and Curtis Townsend embrace at midcourt. These are 2 guys that, longtime head assistants on good basketball teams. So there's probably some camaraderie there, and that is an embrace between those 2 guys. So, okay. Interesting to, figure this out, see what's going on. So that was situation number 1. Now we have the second situation that plays out in Allen, and I'm really going to break this thing down for you. Shout out to Tim Fitzgerald. Friends in a normal space, rivals in the business world. But here is a little bit of video, because this is the tough thing. You're trying to piece together things that happened in Allen because nobody has been able to provide a full video from what took place. But I'm going to break this down for you on what happens here. Okay, so we see there goes Jerome Tang walking, Bill Self, boom. No eye contact, really between either guy, because Bill Self doesn't say anything. It doesn't look like he moves his mouth. Both just kind of walk by. That's a quick handshake. Some would even call it maybe just like a love tap of hands. It's not like whatever.
That does look like 2 guys that don't really like each other.
Which is good. I want people to realize, again, this is a good thing. This is a good thing that these guys don't like each other. K-State and KU are meant to hate each other. This is a thing that should be they should not be friends. So this is good. This is where things get hairy, though. And this is where the issue comes from in my book. Because I think if this is the only interaction between Jerome Tang and Bill Self, nothing else happens. But there's the follow-up with Curtis Townsend. Jerome Tang, here's the deal. This is bad handshake mechanics in my eyes. I think that there is miscommunication here. The level of which Curtis Townsend has his hand, Jerome Tang thinks, oh, that's a high five. I'm going for a high five right there. So Jerome Tang goes for the high five. Curtis Townsend thinks it's a handshake. And so he grabs his hand, and Jerome Tang keeps walking by. And I get why Curtis Townsend would be like, hey, man, what the hell? We hugged in Manhattan. That's the kind of relationship these guys have, where they are embracing at midcourt in Manhattan. So he's thinking, what's going on here? What's wrong with that guy? So I get that. Then you look at who is behind Curtis Townsend. That's Fred Quartelbaum, another longtime assistant on Bill Self's staff. It looks like a hand is pulled away, but I think we're getting blocked by Curtis Townsend. And I think that that's the back end of a high five that they gave. So we have a high five that's taken place there, and then the cheerleaders and a photographer get in the way, so we don't know what the interaction with Norm Roberts was like. But that is what I think took place there, and I think a lot of this is a big misunderstanding. I think it's Jerome Tang and Bill Self. They are not bros, and then everything else that took place was a misunderstanding. Am I wrong? How do you see this, Drew?
I mean, I feel like that's a great breakdown. It's 2024, and we're getting videos of handshakes getting broken down, and I felt like it was about kind of like what you said, as there was just miscommunication between Curtis Townsend and Bill Self, which wasn't great, and then or Curtis Townsend and Jerome Tang, which wasn't great. And then Bill Self and Jerome Tang, it just doesn't seem like they really like each other after their interaction just in Manhattan and then in Lawrence of, oh, I'm not really making eye contact with this guy, but it is it is what it is at this point, where it's miscommunication on both parties, but at the same time, like, if that's the one thing that you're gonna be like pissed off about after the game, if you're Bill Self, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, exactly. So that is what we have there. That is one other thing. I will submit the last piece of evidence here for you. So this is the broadcast feed from after the game, and we'll keep an eye on how all this plays out right here. So Jerome Tang very clearly hugs KJ Adams there. If Jerome Tang wanted to get out of there in a timely manner and was wanting to blow guys off, he's not hugging the opposing
No.
players. Like, that's the thing. If there was intention here for Jerome Tang to be like, screw you guys, he's not going to hug KJ Adams. It was Hunter Dickinson. And I will also say, as I said for Curtis Townsend, I get why he sees that and feels that way. I understand why Hunter Dickinson feels that way. But again, I think it's a misinterpretation. So here we go. Walk in. Hunter Dickinson gives the shoulder pat like, hey, way to go, coach, whatever. Thanks for letting us kick your ass. Jerome Tang is looking off in the distance and not paying attention to Hunter Dickinson. DeJuan Harris's head is turned. Jerome Tang, I think, was trying to get DeJuan Harris's attention and give him props for locking up K-State's only offensive threat and derailing any chance K-State had in the game. And so I think that's what he's doing there, is like giving the props and love to DeJuan Harris. But Hunter Dickinson sees that and is like, I just got blown off there. I think it is multiple miscommunications that took place between Jerome Tang and the guys that he met in the line, odd circumstances. And again, combine that with a guy that was really pissed off about losing that game by 22 and was disappointed and frustrated with how his players played. I think that's what you get there. Is it's a guy that he doesn't want to be, shaking hands with these guys and being out there for 5 minutes after getting his butt kicked. But I think there was nothing intentional on his part to blow by guys or, do flybys. The only thing we're missing here is video that shows the main chunk of the post-game handshake line. And we don't have that. And until we do have it, I don't think anybody can really speculate what went down there, because I think we're getting all types of people that claim that they saw it and they're like, this happened, this didn't happen. I don't think we know, but based on the video we have, I think that Jerome Tang is the victim of some unintended mistakes on his part. Could he have handled the post-game handshake a little bit better? Yeah, I get being upset. We've all been there before, but you got to handle it a little bit better, especially if this is going to happen. But I will say, going back to what I mentioned earlier, I do think Jerome Tang has to answer to this a little bit, because he is now multiple times, 3 times after games this year, either him or his assistants have been in the middle of some kind of controversy.
I'll also add in, like, we go back to that video from the one in Lawrence, and you can see DeJuan Harris and Jerome Tang both make eye contact, like with Hunter Dickinson right there. Like, you can see that they were clearly made eye contact and said something. But for me, it's not just like a Bill Self KU thing. Like, it's also a very Hunter Dickinson thing to be upset by that. I mean, he said that he was upset, or that he got motivation from how like excited K-State was to win in Manhattan, because they hadn't done that before, or hadn't done that a lot. And it's like, bro, they literally beat KU last season.
Well, that is the thing too. The Hunter Dickinson post-game comments, like that changes the story a little bit, because I think that's what's getting lost in translation here, is that Jerome Tang has gone into the stands to celebrate after every win in Bramlage since, I don't know what game he started doing that last year, but it's happened after every win. Like, that's just what they do. Everybody has their weird traditions. And I think, it's just Jerome Tang celebrating with his people, giving them love and props, and everybody has their own thing. Hunter Dickinson obviously didn't like it, thought, hey, they're acting like this is something special. Actually, that was the least special win that K-State had ever had against KU, since he didn't storm the court. But then the other thing that, he ended up mentioning, and I saw somebody, it was like a Houston fan that responded, was like, Hunter Dickinson's lost like 14 of 20 road games the last couple of seasons at Michigan and KU. Like, he loses all the time on the road. Like, it's not anything special for these teams. I was like, okay. So I don't know. Like, the Hunter Dickinson element of it is a little tough. So we'll see how it goes. But I think we saw a giant miscommunication between people, and that's led to all of this drama that has played out from the K-State KU game. But it's good. It's good for what will take place next year. It's good for if there's a possible rematch in Kansas City, which isn't like the most insane thing to think about. So that's the breakdown of Shake Gate. Any other thoughts before? I mean, this girl does not want to be helpful in any way, shape, or form today. Yeah, dude.
I'll say ban handshake lines. Handshake lines are stupid.
All right, good way to end it. We're out of here. Sorry for annoying everybody with a literal crybaby. I promise she's normally good, but man, today not having it. So nothing could get her down to be happy. And now we got to go get her in a car seat and go pick up the dog. So I'm sure this will be a fun afternoon for me. For Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. We'll talk to you later.